Welcome to this episode of Cancast. I'm here with Hannah Deacon, who needs absolutely no introduction. Thank you for joining me, Hannah. Lovely
Thanks
to
for
see
having me,
you.
Carly. It's been lovely to be invited, so thanks very much for having me.
Hannah tuning in from a London hotel. She's been on a little adventure.
Makes me sound very exotic, and I'm not.
First time out of the house.
Yeah,
back in the real world. So it's really nice to catch up. So I think everybody knows who you are, Hannah, and knows your story. You and other parents have been at the forefront of access, really, and led the way for paediatric, which has then opened up the way for sort of adult access over the past few years. And you've done some bloody brilliant work. So I guess we're all in debt, really, to the work that you've done. So it's really great to have you here. And I guess probably the first question that everyone will want to know, and you'll get asked this millions of times a day, but how's Alfie doing?
Yeah, I mean, he's fantastic, and thank you for your kind words. I don't ever feel that anyone's in debt to me at all. I feel sad that it's not good enough for so many millions of people still, and that needs to be helped. And obviously I thank you and all the other advocates and campaigners who continue to try and make it better for people, because I've always said this right from the beginning: this is never about one person or one person's journey. This is about a group of patients who said enough and tried to make change, and together I think that we're very, very effective. And so I'm just grateful to be part of that, and that's something that's helped Alfie and hopefully will help many other people. And that's a nice legacy for him and me to be part of that, because it's obviously, well, it's not obvious, but it's a very grief-inducing thing to go through, having a child that's so ill. So, you know, it's been a wonderful thing to be part of. Alfie's really well. He was seizure-free for over a year, about 2 weeks ago, so the beginning of May. We had a long stretch of seizure freedom for 10 months. We then tried to, that was from 2018 to 2019, we then tried to wean some of his anti-epileptics, which sadly caused some rebound seizures. So we've realised that Alfie does need cannabis as well as anti-epileptics. Sadly, there's not many children with refractory epilepsy that can just be on cannabis. Again, in that sense, it's not it's an adjuvant treatment, I think, for many of these children. So yeah, we've got him in a really good place now. He's at a new school, which is a school for people with learning difficulties. So he was in mainstream. He's now at a school like that. He goes to school on the bus. He's very, very happy. He's not easy every day. You know, we have autism to deal with, behaviour problems. He's a typical big brother to his little sister, and a pain in the neck to her. So yeah, it's not easy, but it's easy in the sense that we don't have any medical emergencies at the moment, and we just take each day. I used to spend a lot of my life living in the future and worrying, because I have such severe anxiety after everything I went through with Alfie, and I spent a lot of time worrying about his future. But I've learned a lot to try and live in the moment. So today is a good day. He wakes up and he's okay, and he's gone to school, and I'm at work, and everything's good. So I've learned to appreciate a lot of things I don't think that many other people do appreciate, unless they've been through something so horrendous. So yeah. I feel very, very blessed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So what was life like before? I mean, you like me and like all of the other activists, I guess, or advocates, or whatever you want to call us, I don't really know.
In this mad.
We thought, I know, completely bonkers, right?
Yes.
Don't do it. So try this at home, guys. Yeah, you sort of just dropped into it just because of what happened and because of what happened to Alfie. So what was life like before? Like, what were you doing before you were in cannabis?
Well,
what would you have thought if somebody said to you, you know, like, in 5 years you're going to be, you know, your life is going to be all about cannabis? That's something I'm always like,
oh well, I wouldn't have believed it at all. We were in a very, very desperate position. Alfie started having seizures at 8 months old, and he has a clustering epilepsy. So it's not like Dravet or LGS where they have seizures every day. He has PCDH19, which causes clustering seizures. So they're very, very severe and always need hospitalization, always need intravenous treatment before cannabis. The only thing that worked for him was intravenous methylprednisolone, which is a steroid, very high dose steroid, and phenobarbital, which is also a very ancient AED but has very severe side effects. So we were just firefighting from the age of 8 months old, really. And I have a huge amount of guilt about that, because when I gave birth to Alfie, I really struggled. I had quite a traumatic labour, and I saw a lady talking about it on the BBC during Mental Health Week the other day about, you know, everyone tells you when you have a baby that you'll feel this amazing amount of love, and it'll just be, you know, all the sleepless nights will overcome that. You'll be overcome it because you'll feel this. But I really identified with what she was talking about, is I didn't feel that. I felt really frightened, and I felt really traumatized by the birth that I'd gone through, and I felt massively out of my depth. I was like, oh shit, I'm a mum and I don't know what I don't know what to do. And I felt really frightened, if I'm completely honest. And then he got poorly, and the amount of guilt I felt then was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. I just thought, you know, I don't want to swear, but fuck, what have I done? I should have spent the last 8 months enjoying my baby, and I didn't. And now he's really sick, and it was incredibly hard to watch him suffer, but also to feel that awful, like, you know, and that's really personal to me, but it's how I felt. And then he was having seizures every 8 months until he was 4, and then he became very, very poorly at 4, and it was every 3 weeks, and by the time he was 5 it was every week. And he had the diagnosis of a PCDH19, and the doctor said there's nothing we can do other than firefight. So every week, Drew and I, my partner Drew, or I, were taking him into hospital in an ambulance at 4 o'clock in the morning, having loads and loads of seizures, holding him down, pumping him full of drugs. Then the seizures would stop after a few days. We'd go home. We'd have 3 or 4 days of severe violent behaviour, punching, kicking, screaming, crying, because he was off his face on drugs, but also because he'd had so many seizures, his brain was very upset. So, and I had Annie when he was 3, so before he got really poorly. And by that, when he was really poorly, she was 2, and we were just existing. Drew and I's relationship was very, very hard. We were both extremely traumatized and couldn't support each other because we were both in so much pain. And yeah, it was awful. And I just got to a point where I realized that the doctors were not going to save him, because they didn't know what to do with him. There's no research. He's one of 9 boys in the world with his condition. As with age, it can cause very severe mental health problems. There's some children with schizophrenia, for example, with Alfie's condition. And I just thought, my partner's 6'3". He used to play rugby, and I thought, God, I don't want to do this when Alfie's that size, because he'll kill me. He'll break my nose, or he'll break my arm, or he'll knock me out. And I don't want to not be a mother to my child. You know, my children, after what happened to Alfie, you know, they became everything to me. And I think I probably did have postnatal depression, and it just wasn't picked up. And so I've just completely focused my life on helping him. And I realized when the doctors couldn't help him that I had to do something. And that's when I just started researching cannabis. I was very lucky to connect with other parents who had used cannabis with their children with epilepsy in America, but also in Ireland and in the UK, or, you know, in Holland and places like that, and talked to those parents and felt very inspired by talking to those parents. And I just thought, fine, I'm going to do it. And that's why we went to Holland and tried cannabis with him, and it worked, and came home and campaigned for access, and we were very, very lucky that we received that. So yeah, I mean, it's been a whirlwind. Sorry.
Fire alarm.
Fire alarm. Tuesday morning fire alarm. I do apologise.
It'd probably just be a tester. Maybe it's going to go off in a minute. Sometimes they test it.
It's just a test. Sorry.
There we go. That's good. That's fine.
Yeah, so it has been an absolute whirlwind, in the sense that it's nothing I planned.
Yeah.
My mum always says it's like serendipity. We were just really lucky to found the right people to support us. We were lucky that the media, you know, we managed to get onto the media in February 18. We managed to meet the Prime Minister in March 18, who allowed us to apply for the licence. That process that we went through with them really helped. They told us really helped them to be able to change the law, because they had to go through the regulation with a fine tooth comb to do it, because it had never been done before to allow someone to apply for a licence. And so, you know, it was just a whirlwind. And I feel now very, very strongly that, you know, when the law changed, it was really, really amazing and really special to have been part of that process, to have helped that happen. But it's very obvious that it's not good enough. You know, it's not good enough for patients. It's not available on the NHS. It's either available privately or through the black market, which again is not appropriate for so many people, especially families with little children who have epilepsy. They need to be knowing what product they're taking. They need to have clinical advice. That's really important. So I feel that I have a role to play, in the sense that of fairness. I want it to be fair. If Alfie has a prescription and 2 other children have a prescription, then everyone should have a prescription that should, you know, that has a chronic illness and believes it will help them. And, you know, that's sort of why I carry on, because I just think it's really important for it to be fair.
I'm not
And
sure.
I don't want to work in Tesco's.
Yeah, I do. Some days I do. Before recording, the first thing I said when I got on was, I've had a bad morning. I don't want to go work in Asda, just so everyone knows. But yeah, no, I think I get that. No, you've been, you've been through a lot, and it is interesting hearing you talk about the birth trauma, because I think that's something that women don't talk about enough, or more so they do now. Like obviously I'm not a mum, but I've got all my friends are mums, and I suppose I'm a daughter, and my mum was actually quite open with her birth trauma. She felt exactly the same way as you did, just petrified and just like, I'm not ready for this. And actually, when my mum was handed me, she said, take it away, I don't want it. She's going to kill me for getting this on film. Take it away, I don't want it. But that's the thing, isn't it? We're sort of conditioned as women to think that as soon as that baby's born, it's going to be this whole like experience which love's going to take over and stuff. But sometimes from friends that I've spoken to, most of that is fear, and it's sort of like,
absolutely
not socially acceptable, is it, to say, actually I'm scared shitless of this and I don't really know what to do, and actually this is a big deal.
Yeah,
it freaks me out.
It's really important to talk about it without guilt, because I think it's very normal. But also, my feeling, my mum said when she gave birth to me, they were in hospital for 2 weeks, so they were managed to establish breastfeeding. Drew's mum said, oh, they took you away for the night. I never knew where you went, but I had a good night's sleep, which made me laugh. And I just think, that's what women need to recover from birth, is to sleep, is to recover, is to establish breastfeeding. I was in hospital for about, 10 hours after I had Alfie. I hadn't established breastfeeding. I was exhausted, and they just ship you out. And actually what we saw on the children's ward in Warwick Hospital, where we spent a huge amount of time when Alfie was very poorly, is that all they do is move the problem to another place, because there was loads of mothers in there with very small babies who hadn't established breastfeeding, whose children needed tube feeding or whatever because their suckle wasn't right. And you just think, actually, why don't you just keep them in the maternity ward for a week, really get them going, and then they won't come into the hospital somewhere else, because actually they'll be, and I think that's a big reason as well, is because women, especially in the Western world, are expected to give birth and get on with it, and just go back to work within 6 months, and they're not taken care of. And actually you see it in places like India and Asia, where granny will move in and cook all the dinners and look after the mother, and it's really important, I think, that new mothers are taken care of like that, and I just don't see it in our society. And I think women, again, have a huge amount of pressure on them to have it all because of feminism, which I think is amazing. We have the right to be mothers, to earn money, to be educated, and all those wonderful things that many women throughout the world do not have the right to. But with that comes a huge amount of pressure to get it all right. And I say that to Drew sometimes. I said, sometimes I feel like I'm doing everything and I'm getting it wrong, because it's too much. Being a mother, running a home, working, trying to help people, some people look to me for all the answers, and I'm not all the answers. I can help, and I'm sure you get the same thing. I can try, I can do everything I can, but I'm not the answer to your journey. Your journey is your journey. My journey was my journey, and I didn't expect anyone else to solve it for me, other than the government in the end. But I wasn't looking to anyone else to sort of solve my problems, so I took it on myself to do that. And I just think there's a huge amount of pressure on women nowadays to have it all and do it well, and we can't, and we need to be talking about that.
And really, in this space, it's been interesting watching how the dynamics change since women have entered this discussion. Like, I suppose, we've been trying to, people have been trying to get the law changed on cannabis or medicinal access for years and years and years, but what it's taken is a sort of a load of women just standing up and saying,
strong mothers,
and actually mothers, you're not messing with my kid, have that.
Exactly. And I think that's been incredibly powerful, and I'm as I said, I'm very grateful to have been part of that. And I think as a force together, or we haven't necessarily worked together, all these mothers, but we've worked separately, and I think as a force, as a group of people, it's been amazing to have been part of it. And I do agree with you, I think women have been the change. Definitely.
I mean, it's it's been, for me personally, it's been a very tough road, and this space is incredibly difficult, and advocating for people or being seen as the sort of person, like you said, with all the answers it's a difficult place to be, isn't it? Like, how has being in this space affected you?
Well, positively and negatively. When I, believe it or not, when I first started on this road, I mean, I've always been someone that wants to be liked. I think that's a human trait, you know, coming back from when we were tribes. You know, if you're not in the group, you're out the group, and that's not a nice place to be. And so I've always been quite shy. I've always been someone who, as long as everyone else is happy, I'm fine. You know, as long as, you know, and I've never really worried about me or what I need in my life, because I've wanted everyone else to be happy, and then I'm sort of fine. And that, being that sort of personality, has been very difficult to come into this, because I realise that not everyone's going to like me now. I realise that some people will just take a dislike to what I've done or what I say, and maybe misinterpret me or whatever, I don't know. But I feel upset about people that don't really know me, that have an opinion on me. That hurts me, because I think if you meet me and get to know me and you still don't like me, that's fine. I accept that, but I don't like to be judged based on gossip or things that I, you know, might not be true, and that hurts me. But I've talked to my partner Drew a lot about it, and I think that's why it's difficult. It's like, I really want to do it, I have to go into the media to do it, I have to be on social media to do it, but part of my personality is very much like, I don't want to be judged, I don't want people to not like me, I really want to be liked. And so it's sort of really, really difficult. And I go between, right, I'm going to go for it, I don't care, and then I go, and I'm like, oh, actually I do care, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard, you know, to sort of remain in a position where you just want to carry on, because and I think it is sad, because there is a lot of divisiveness within the sector, within campaigners, within groups that want different things. And I think there's a lot of judgment, and actually the most important thing is that we all want to see change, and we all want patients to be okay. And what we should be doing is leaving our egos and our opinions at the door sometimes, and just work together. Because actually, I remember Peter Carroll saying to me, who helped me from End Our Pain, who helped me with Alfie's license, he said, what governments love best is campaigns that fall out, because they spend the whole time falling out with each other and don't do anything. You know, and he's absolutely right. And it is hard, but I have learned a lot of positive out of it, is that having a child, as I've said, with like Alfie, has caused me a huge amount of grief. I still feel very, very sad about him having epilepsy and what his future holds, and the detrimental effect it's had on me and my partner, and the anxiety. I mean, I have terrible anxiety, which I have got under control a lot more, but I do become very anxious if I'm away from home, or if Alfie has signs of having a seizure. I become completely I can't control my emotions, so I can become very stressed or very angry or very upset, and it's PTSD basically. It sort of overcomes me, and that's very sad. But positively, I feel that Alfie has brought us something that I feel so engaged with, and I love, and I really enjoy being part of something that matters. Like Drew always says to me, I think you're so lucky to get up every day and want to go to work and feel passionate about it. There's lots of people in this country that, or over the world, that don't go to work every day and enjoy what they do. So it's brought a lot of positivity, but it's also brought a lot of difficult things for me to deal with because of my personality. I'm not, you know, I have got quite low self-esteem, in the sense that I do worry what people think of me. I'm confident in the fact that I know what I'm talking about, and I'm happy to share that, but I worry about what people think of me, and I don't want people to dislike me, but I have to also accept that they will, and I've just got to get on with it and focus on what I can do to help and sod those people basically. But that's taken me a lot of time to get my head around that.
It can be really hard. And for me, I think like some days I'm like, okay, so I've got a load of crap on social media today. I'm like, that's fine. It's sort of just water off a duck's back. I just carry on. And then other days I'm literally under a blanket, just in tears, going, I'm not doing this anymore. You know, it's just like, I don't know how I can take this amount of negativity and still like get on the phone and be like, this is so, you know,
I know it must be, it is incredibly hard, but I think that's why it's really important to talk about it between us. And actually try and be kind. And I've always said it, you know, we won't all agree on everything.
No,
but that doesn't mean that we can't have mutual respect.
Totally.
And be polite to each other. And that, I think social media gives people a position to hide behind. You know, a lot of these people are sat on their sofas, you know, probably not got out of bed for 3 days, having an opinion on what you've done, or having an opinion on what I've done. And it's like, well, get off your ass and do something then. Yeah, that's the thing. That's what you have to remember, is that people, it's very easy to have an opinion and they don't do anything. It's, well, you know, and that's what I think about. And I mean, I've been lambasted before about, you know, why don't you just grow your own cannabis? And it's like, well, have you ever looked after a child with refractory epilepsy? No. And until you come to my house when it was the worst it had been and take care of my son, then you can have an opinion on what I should do.
Yeah.
You can't, you know, you can't have an opinion. And, you know, don't you think that if I could legally grow my own cannabis and do it well and make sure that he was well, I'd do it? Of course. I mean, I would do it if it was legal and I felt safe to do it and I understood what I'm doing. The fact of the matter is, it's not legal. My kids mean everything to me. I don't want to get in trouble with the police. I don't want to get in trouble with social services. And actually, what happens when I die? Or if I'm incapacitated, or if I'm taken chronically ill, who's going to grow his cannabis then? No one. He needs a prescription. And that's not because, you know, I'm some stooge for the pharmaceutical industry. Absolutely quite the opposite. It's because I want him to be safe.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that people have this sort of critical opinion. They don't understand. They don't ask people, actually, what do you think? They just take a stand and have an opinion. And I just think that's really sad. And it's one thing that I have learned over this past few years, is not to have judgment. Not, you know, don't listen to the gossip, don't have judgment, wait to meet someone, and then you can judge someone based on that conversation or getting to know them. But other than that, don't judge them and don't listen to gossip, because, as you know, it's like EastEnders in the cannabis world. There's a lot of gossip.
I think it's even worse than that. I was trying to think of an even worse soap than EastEnders, but I just said
I think it exists.
I think there isn't one. I think maybe it is its own. It is its own soap. But yeah, I mean, the grow your own. You know, I'm pro grow your own, and I enjoy growing your own. I think it's great. But you know, when I look after my godkids or my, you know, I can't. There's no way with 2 or 3 kids that don't have needs, you know, that are just like kids, healthy kids without any health conditions. There's no way I could have them around all the time and look after my plants
what you do
properly.
exactly.
So God knows how anybody who has got, you know, I don't know how anybody can say to you when you're looking after 2 kids, one of them has got quite severe health needs, that you should be growing your own medicine. And I've always felt that, you know, with paediatric cases, and particularly with paediatric neurology cases, they need such a standard dose.
They do, and they they need clinical intervention as well. There's a lot of, I'm sure you know, I support, I help to support Matt with Medcan Support, and there's a lot of parents in there that need clinical intervention and don't have it, and have had to go to the black market. And I just don't agree with that. That's not harm reduction. That is putting people in the way of harm. And I quite agree with you. I think people should be allowed to consume cannabis as medicine safely, however they wish it to be. But my fight has and remains to be about paediatric cases, and about that. That's what's important to me. And people have moaned at me before, well, you know, why don't you stand up for the adults? It's like, well, I can't stand up for everyone. And there's, you know, there's people like you doing that. And we all have our place in this fight, I think, to stand up for what we believe in. And I don't, you can't have it all, you can't do everything, but actually I'm passionate about, because I've lived it. I've lived experience of going through what I went through with Alfie. I don't want any family in this country to go through that unless they have no choice. And there's many, many thousands of families in this country dealing with children with chronic illness who shouldn't be doing what they're doing, because if they could use cannabis, I bet their quality of lives would be hugely better. And also, for me, it's about this being a mother. Usually the mother is the full-time carer still. So when a child is chronically ill, it's usually the mother that's the full-time carer. So it's the mother that can't work, the mother that can't go out with her friends for a drink, the mother that can't pay her taxes. And part of being, you know, for many, many people, being a carer is a full-time job, and it's the most sort of thankless task, which I think as well, again, it's not recognised in the as far as I can see in the UK, maybe in other countries, I don't know, but we talk a lot about carers of the elderly, or carers or young carers. But what about parents who have babies who think that they're going to be like their friends and go to school when they're 4 and life's going to go back to pretty much normal? who have to look after a child that is a baby for the rest of their life, basically. You know, there's so much grief, there's so much pain, there's so much anxiety, and I just don't think that people are thinking enough about how that is, and that is really, really, really hard. And again, that's why I think I do what I do, because I don't want to sit and think about that. I want to look and try and do something really positive. But yeah, it's incredibly hard. And I remember when I posted about the Bedrolite supply issue, someone put on my page, oh, well, you should have thought about this. This is your own fault. Why didn't you just grow your own? And then you wouldn't have to worry about Bedrolite supply. And I'm like, it's just horrible. It's really horrible. Again, but they're just armchair surfers probably, who sit at home smoking weed, probably not having to look after kids, and have no clue. And that's what upsets me more than anything, is that sort of judgment, because it's not fair. And it's not, you know, it's not right, but you will get it, sadly, whatever you do. So I just try and block out the noise.
That was going to be my next question. Like, what's your top tips then for like keeping yourself sane?
Exercise.
What do you do?
I bought a Peloton in May last year when during lockdown. I absolutely love it. So I do a lot of Peloton. And I think, I mean, Drew always says, well, just switch it off. It's not easy if it's your job, but it's true. I think I'm same as you. I go through phases of feeling incredibly upset and wanting to be working in collaboration with everyone, because actually I think we're all got a common goal, is to make things better for people. And I feel sad that we're not all like that. We're not all working together, and that saddens me, but it's the reality of it. And I would sit and talk to anyone who has a problem with me, and hopefully we can sort it out and we'll work together. But to be honest, at the same point, you know, I am always trying my best, and I will never ever say I'm perfect. I'll never say that I probably don't irritate some people, because I do. I think we all do. But I have got a good heart, and I'm trying my best, and that's how I deal with it, you know. But it's a day-to-day struggle. Some days I'm exactly the same as you, and I just think, oh, sod this, I've had enough. But then I think, well, what else would I do? I don't know what else to do.
That's the next step, isn't it? It's like, okay, so if you're going to stop, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do in your life? Like, I don't know, exactly. I'll just do this. So it is hard. But I try not to stay on social media that much, to be honest. I post when I need to. The one thing I do not do is comment, because
you look at the post comments.
Yeah, like I look at if, you know, but I don't engage, because actually I have never seen, I don't know about you, but I have never seen someone who has been aggressive. Someone has
turned around.
They've just gone, oh, actually, do you know what, you're right, I'm really sorry. That's not going to happen. So what's the point in engaging? Because they have an opinion and they don't want to change it. So there's no point. So I don't engage with negativity. Rise above it. You know, vibrate at a higher power, babe.
Totally. I mean, I was watching RuPaul the other day, and he was like, never look at the comments section, but he said it in such a dramatic way. It was like, never.
But it's sort of true, and I just think, you know, I know it sounds a bit stupid and spiritual, but I just think, bring yourself higher, rise above it. You'll attract positivity towards you, and if people want to work with you, great. And I want to be mates with everyone, or at least be respectful with everyone. And if they don't want to be respectful with me, fine.
Totally. I mean, I think the majority of the time that's an energetically a really good space to be in. I think,
not
you know,
always possible.
Not always possible.
Oh, God, no.
Not always. I mean, you know, if you had a bad day, or if Alfie's struggling, or, you know, other things have happened, or, you know, when I'm in pain, I'm like, oh, my tolerance level's down, you know, it's like.
If Alfie gets poorly again, it will be different for me, definitely, because I won't have the resilience that I've got now. But because he's been in such a good place for a long time, I am resilient. But I completely agree with you. When he got poorly again in 2019, I didn't want to talk to anyone about it, because I was worried that people would say, oh, well, cannabis doesn't work for him, or you know, I was worried people would have an opinion, so I didn't really talk about it. And I put on a show many times when I was going to events or talking to people, when inside I was dying with grief, but I was pretending I was fine. And I think a lot of parents like me do that, and a lot of, like you, if you have chronic pain, some days you're feeling awful, and you're having to pretend you're okay, and that it's really, really hard. It's really hard. So I agree, and I you know, I think we're all good at giving advice, but actually the reality of what we do is different, and I do get days where I feel very sad about things that have been difficult, or relationships that have not worked or broken down within this sector. I feel really, really sad about that, but you know, I just have to try and get on with it and do what I think is good, and when Alfie, or if Alfie does become very poorly again, then I might need to take a step back, and I just have to cross that bridge. But cannabis has been the only thing that stopped him from having the worst quality of life. He's, you know, and when he was in hospital every week, he had no quality of life. He wouldn't have, you know, he just wasn't happy, and we weren't happy, and now he has many, many, many days of happiness and pleasure, and so do I, and I can work and I can do things that matter to me, and Drew and I can go out for a drink to the pub sometimes, and all the things that couples take for granted that are really special for us. So yeah, every day as it comes, enjoy the good days, and remember the bad ones are sent to test you, and you learn, I think, from them. And yeah, and surround yourself with positive people who love you, and that's something that's really important. And I mean, again, Drew says that to me. He said, if I ever tell you that you're an idiot, then you need to think about it. But he said, other than that, if your family and your friends love you, then that has to be enough. He said, because you're never going to make everyone like you or be happy with you. That's just reality. And he's right. You know, he always says to me, actually, I've talked more about him in this interview than I have anyone. He always says, do you think people think I exist? He's like, I am Alfie's dad, but it's because he never, you know, at the beginning, I said to him, you know, if you want to go on the telly and do the interviews with me, or as well, or instead of, that's fine. He's like, no, it's not my thing, because he's very, very laid back and very quiet. But he absolutely has been pivotal to enabling me to do what I've done for Alfie. And you know, he doesn't get enough recognition for that, so I'm very, very lucky to have him behind me. And I'm sure it's the same with you, with your relationship. You know, you people behind you that don't ever get talked about or mentioned, or people don't know who they are, they're pivotal to allowing you to do what you do.
And in a
without
way,
Drew, I wouldn't have.
They're outside of it, isn't it? Because you've got somewhere to go that they're not immediate.
Private,
yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
Big shout out, Drew. Good work.
You like that? Thank you.
Yeah, there we go. So I suppose you've been, since Alfie's got better and stuff, you've just been relentless in supporting other families and doing things like that, activism wise. What are you working on at the moment? Is there anything you can tell us about what's going on at the moment?
Yeah, so I've been helping to run the Medical Cannabis Clinician Society since 2019, and that's something that I'm really passionate about, because I feel that education is massively lacking for doctors and allied health workers, and they are the key to pushing this forward as well, because as you know, this is very much a patient-led movement. Patients are going to doctors telling them what they want them to prescribe and things like that, and that it's like an upside down model, because you don't get that in any other any other medical device or medical intervention. So it's very different, and you get all these groups as well, like Mike was saying this morning. You don't get groups where people have had hypertensive medicines prescribed and they're all talking about which hypertensive medicine's the best, but you do with cannabis. So it's a very, very different world. So I think it's very sort of top heavy with the patient movement, and there's not enough doctors engaged and on board. So that's something I'm really passionate about. We've got members from most of the prescribers, and people like nurses, pharmacists, even paramedics, people like that, who are interested in cannabis, won't be able to prescribe it at the moment, but want to know more about it. So that's really important work, and I really, really enjoyed doing that, and I work on that with Mike and Kate Thorpe, and then we have a clinical committee as well of doctors who are all across all the different clinics and everything. So that's really important, that it's very sort of neutral, and I really enjoy that. Also, I set up with Mike Barnes, Alfie. Mike Barnes was who got the license for Alfie initially, because our NHS doctor did want to prescribe and did want to apply for the license, but sadly he was blocked from helping by his trust due to sort of advice that they'd been given by the BPNA about not prescribing, and that was really sad. But Mike, bless him, came to the fore and did the application with the Home Office for 3 months, and we've just become really, really good friends, and he's always really looked out for Alfie, and we've been very, very lucky to have him in our lives. And we worked together in the society. But then also I had 6 years as being a carer, and I needed to go to work again. And I thought, well, I want to do something that I'm really passionate about. And so I thought, well, makes sense for me to continue to do what I'm doing, but try and earn a bit of money from it. And, you know, I'm absolutely not focused on, I've got to make a load of money, because that, you know, after everything I've been through, I know that that does not bring you happiness. What brings you happiness is health and people you love. That's what's important to me. But at the same point, I want to work as a woman. I don't want to be stuck at home all day. I want to go to work. I want to feel like I'm doing something positive. So Mike and I set up Maple Tree Consulting in 2019, and basically we support startups in the sector, medical cannabis and CBD, on understanding the legislation that's required, on networking them with stakeholders within who they need to work with, on and we work with all different companies, people like farmers, people like importing into the UK, CBD startups. And for me, it's about making them understand why the patient is important, because what I see at the moment in the private sector, sadly a lot of the time, is that the patient is not at the center of everything everyone's doing. They're sort of like a peripheral thing at the side, and it's all about margins and commercial entity, and that's not what we want to see. Obviously the most important thing is the NHS Access, and that's what Mike and I are both actively working on all the time. But what we also feel is that there is going to be a private sector. We know that, because actually I think what may happen in the future is that the NHS will actually refer out to the private clinics, because
I agree.
That's a seed model in brain injury, in cosmetics, in loads of other things. The NHS can't be specialists in everything. And I think actually that's a great solution to the NHS problem, because they're not going to want to prescribe without randomized controlled trials. We understand that that actually can't happen in whole plant products. It's okay in isolates, but not in whole plant products. So let's say, okay, well, then let's refer out to private clinics where there is the expertise, where they have got the supply chain, all of that. So, you know, that's what I'd like to see. And I think hopefully in the future that might happen. But obviously research is also key and very important. So we are working on that sort of thing through Maple Tree as well, the lobbying side of thing. We also work with Peter, who's a political lobbyist, on trying to lobby for better engagement between, you know, Home Office and MHRA and NICE and all those stakeholders that probably need to get together and talk about how things can be made better. So yeah, there's lots of things we do with Maple Tree, and I really enjoy it. And and then obviously I help support Medcan Support, which is a support group for people with or children with epilepsy, and carers with epilepsy, carers of people with epilepsy, and also just carry on doing my campaign type work. I don't really get involved with End Our Pain anymore. I did sort of be the sort of figurehead for End Our Pain up until about March 2019. But if I'm completely honest, there was, again, some divisive issues within that group. And you're always going to get that, sadly, with groups of patients or parents. And it was actually quite affecting my mental health, to be honest. And I've not, again, really talked about this openly, but it was affecting my mental health. So I stepped away from that. So there are many parents that I spend a lot of time talking to, and I continue to keep in touch with, but I don't want to take responsibility for them. And I felt very responsible. I felt like I was going to change it all for them. And I was really naive. I was like, yeah, you know, we're going to do it. And actually I've realised that this is going to be a much harder road than it was for Alfie, sadly, to get his licence. And I feel really sorry for them. And they're having to pay a lot of money for private prescriptions. And I feel horrendously bad for them, but I also have to accept that it's not my responsibility at the moment, and I will continue to advocate for them, and I will continue to stand up, but I'm not the answer. I think there's a lot of government interaction and political engagement that needs to happen for that to change for them. So yeah, I do keep in touch with a lot of the parents, but I try not to be sort of a figurehead for them anymore, because I just, again, it was a lot to do with,
it's a lot
to do with, and it affected my mental health, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. I just had enough, to be honest.
It's a very emotive space, and you're dealing with people who are at crisis point.
Yeah, and it's got really hard.
At crisis point, but they're at the worst kind of crisis point, because what you're talking about is their children. You know, it's the most emotive.
Yeah, and I don't think, and sadly, I just don't think I was strong enough to not take it personally. And that's basically what I needed to do, is like you say, I know, I was there. I spent, you know, a year having to pay for Alfie's medicine. It was very expensive. I had to fundraise. I've done it all. Obviously not as long as they have, but there was moments when people would would shout at me and things, and I what I needed to realize is that's not personal. They're just in a bad place.
Yeah.
But I took it really personally, and it really upset me a few times. And so, yeah, I'm very much in contact with the people involved. That I just don't, I'm not a figurehead. I know Joe Griffiths now manages all the parents and does that very well, and that's fine. And I just yeah, I keep in touch with all of them, but I don't run that group anymore.
Yeah.
I found it too hard. I'm probably
Well, I mean, that's the thing.
I'm too, I take things too personally, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's about what you can manage and where you can be most effective, isn't it? And I think it just shows an emotion and a level of emotional awareness when you step back for the sake of yourself, your family, and the greater cause.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was causing problems at home. Yeah. And because I was really upset, and I, the most important people in my life are my kids and Drew, and I'm not going to let that situation affect my family. So you're absolutely right. It was hard for me because I feel like I failed a bit on that sense, but actually I know what I'm good at, and what I'm good at is not necessarily managing a load of emotionally upset parents, because I just took it too personally.
Yeah. Well, this isn't a job where you're handed a job description and you get a wage and you know exactly where your responsibilities are and where to escalate things. We're literally making it up as we go along and doing our best every day. We wake up no matter how much pain we're in, no matter how much shit's going on at home, no matter what's going on outside, no matter the fact that there's a global pandemic. We're just getting up and we're just doing what we think is best in our guts and doing it to the best of our abilities, and that's all we can do. And that's going to change, isn't it? That's not always going to be the same. We're not always going to be in the front. We're not always going to be in the back. We're going to be doing whatever's best. And I think that's, that's going to be a dynamic that shifts.
Yeah, I think again it goes back to knowing in yourself that you're doing your best and that being enough.
Yeah.
And if people perceive that as not enough, then that's their problem, not yours. But that takes a lot of self-confidence, I think, or and I struggle with that side of things. So
yeah, for sure. What so if there's someone watching this who has a child with a pediatric neurology case that they know of, or they their kids have epilepsy, where would they be best to go for the best advice, do you think?
As far as I'm concerned with that, it would be Medcan Support, that's run by Matt Hughes, who's got a little boy called Charlie with epilepsy. He's done an amazing job as a volunteer. He works full-time in a school as an IT manager, and he's created an amazing website. He's got a great Facebook page. He's extremely knowledgeable. It's a great support group. There's about 385 people in that group now. I think it could be thousands. If he actually had some money to spend on promoting the organisation, I think he could have thousands of people in there. But he's done very, very well, and I would go there because it's a very supportive group. And if you go onto the website, which is medcansupport.co.uk, there's loads and loads of information about cannabis, about cannabinoids, about what it is, because he's a big advocate for education, because a lot of it's really hard, because a lot of families with very severely ill children just want someone to fix it. And I get that, because I was there, and you just want someone to go, it's okay, I'll do it for you. And it's the same, I remember talking to parents before I went to Holland, and I just wanted one of them to go, it's all right, I'll sort this out for you. And I realised quite quickly that they weren't going to do that. They were very kind and talked to me on the phone and helped me, but I had to make it happen. That's why we moved to Holland, and then that's why we came home and fought the government, because I was like, well, if I'm waiting for someone to do this for me, then I'm going to be waiting a long time. So I need to make it happen. And I think it's very much about that. If you want to do something that is different for your child with epilepsy or autism, or if you want to go outside the doctor's realm, so to speak, and do your own research and understand it, then that's a great website to start you off with, and then you can start asking questions. But we've had some great success stories where people have come to that group, got prescriptions, and their children are doing loads better. And that that feeling is, and that's why I support them, because that feeling is amazing. I've had emails before from people just saying, thank you so much for contacting me and telling me about this group, my child's much better. And I've told Drew about it. It's like, it makes our year to think that there's one person out there, and I'm sure you've had it before, where one person has just gone, thank you, my life is much better. And that's what this is all about. Yes, I've got to have a job because I need to earn money because I have to pay the mortgage, but that's not what it's about for me. What it's about is that personal feeling of, you know, my son's story has helped me to help some people. That's a wonderful feeling, and there's not many people in this world that can really truly say that, I don't think. You know, so I'm very lucky, and yeah, I think that group is brilliant, a brilliant support, and I would urge anyone who's interested in sort of treating their children with cannabinoids to join that group, definitely.
Amazing. I'll make sure I'll try and remember to put the link in for anyone who's wanting that. I've got one more. I know that you've got to go, so I've got one more question. Okay. And I ask everybody this, and it's a difficult one. But so if you had a magic wand now, and you could literally just wave it and sort out this whole medical cannabis situation in whatever way you wanted, how would it look?
Well, I think the sort of short answer to that would be to have fair access for anyone who needs it, because, you know, as I've said, I'm a campaigner for children with epilepsy, but I also absolutely believe that anyone like yourself or anyone in a situation with chronic need should have the right to access cannabis however they wish to access it. So we need NHS access. How that looks, whether we go down the path of a real world evidence trial and then it being available in the NHS, or do we ask them to refer out to the private sector and then it becomes not their problem but they pay for it? I don't know. I think there's lots of options on that, but that needs to happen for people who want a prescription or who want to not grow their own cannabis. But I absolutely feel strongly that if people want to grow some plants for their ailments, they should be allowed to, and that's but it's not something I campaign on, because it's not my fight in that sense. That's what you're there for.
No more pressure, please, Hannah.
No,
that's cool.
I mean,
that's great. That's actually,
you've done amazing work with what you do at Cancast, so I take my hat off to you as well, and I'm looking forward to interviewing you on the other side in July for our podcast.
We're gonna flip it, aren't we now? And I'm gonna have to come on your podcast.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. But I mean, the most important thing is fair access for all.
Yeah, I think actually probably you answered that identically to the way I answered it, because someone was like, well, what about you then? And that was like, pretty much, I want it all. But everyone else has answered it slightly differently, so I think possibly we're quite aligned there on where we want to see things going, which is good. No more division, guys.
No,
we want the same thing. All good. Brilliant. All right, Hannah, I'm gonna let you dash because I know you've got a train to catch, but it was bloody lovely to catch up.
Yeah,
and see you
really nice. Thank you for having me, Carly. I really enjoyed having a chat with you, and it's been too long. So
yeah, it has. Cool. All right, I'm going to stop recording now. Thanks, Hannah.